Greetings and welcome to Sanctuary. In today's video, I will quickly explain the main concepts and terms around dealing damage in Diablo 4. As usual, if you are after a specific thing, you can jump right there by following the timestamps of the video. Let's begin. In Diablo 4, there are two main types of damage: direct damage that you deal immediately, and damage over time that is spread over a specific period of time, depending on your skill that you're using. Of course, there are multiple branches of those, such as distant and close damage, damage to healthy injured enemies, and so on, but we won't get into specifics. Interesting thing to mention here is that only the direct damage can critically hit. A critical hit is 50% increase to your damage, and of course this number can be further increased, just like you can increase the critical hit chance. It is important to note that the regular hits are colored in white in Diablo 4, while the critical hits are colored in yellow. Speaking of that, there are two more damage colors that you should be aware of. First one is blue and the second one is orange. Let me first explain the blue color. If you see damage numbers colored in blue, this is due to the Overpower effect. In general, you have 3% flat chance to do Overpower damage, and sadly you cannot increase it, or at least I couldn't find any way to do so in the beta version of the game. However, certain characters such as the Druid, for example, have their own ways to guarantee Overpower hit so that it doesn't rely on chance. If you see damage colored in orange though, this is a critical Overpower damage. Interesting thing about Overpower is that the damage is not based on your weapon or any offensive stat. Instead, the combined value of your life and your fortified life is added to the damage of the skill that you're using. Of course, you have ways to further amplify the Overpower effect. For example, you can equip gear that adds additional percent to the Overpower damage, or you can simply get as many points as possible on the willpower stat that can further increase the final Overpower damage. The next effect is vulnerable. This one is extremely straightforward. If you're vulnerable, you take 20% more damage. If your enemies are vulnerable, they take 20% more damage, and their life bars glow in purple. Okay, a few words about Lucky Hit. It is easier actually to call it proc chance, because this is exactly what Lucky Hit is. However, before we get to the math, there is one thing that every single one of you must do, and I mean that, every single one of you. And this is to go to the in-game main menu, go to options and then to gameplay. In this menu, you must enable the advanced tooltip information setting. This will make sure you actually see the lucky hit chance of all skills in your skill tree, and this is super important if you want to understand what is the best way to make sure that the lucky hit effect procs as often as possible. So, how the actual lucky hit mechanic work. Let's say that you have an imaginary skill called Rage that has 50% chance to trigger lucky hit, and we have Aspect that gives us 30% chance to stun enemies for 2 seconds or lucky hit. This basically means that I will be triggering lucky hit on average every second time that I use Rage. Remember, Rage has 50% chance to trigger a lucky hit, and only when the lucky hit is triggered, only then I will have 30% chance to trigger the stun effect. So in a way, I will trigger stun once within roughly 6 or 7 times when I use the skill Rage. Of course, it can happen on the first cast of the skill if you are extremely lucky, or vice versa, it can happen on the 10th or on the 11th time if you are very unlucky. Another quick example. Imagine that Rage now has 100% chance to trigger lucky hit, and we still have 30% chance to stun our enemies for 2 seconds on lucky hit. This basically means that on average, we'll be stunning our enemies within 3 casts of the Rage skill. And final example, we'll be stunning our enemies on every cast of Rage, only in the case when Rage has 100% chance to trigger lucky hit and we have 100% chance to stun on lucky hit, which is highly unlikely to happen, but it is a good example. You also must be aware that you can increase your lucky hit chance of your skills by equipping gear that adds bonus to it. You can see your current bonus in the utility part of the character stats profile. It is called Lucky Hit Chance Bonus. The current lucky hit chance you see in your skills should also account for the extra lucky hit chance you get from your items, or at least this was the case when tested it in the beta version of the game. And the last term I want to touch upon is Berserking. This one is only available to barbarians, at least to the best of my knowledge. Its effect is quite simple. While you have it, your movement speed is increased by 30% and you deal 25% more damage. All in all, a pretty solid buff for your barb. Alright guys, so basically this is going to be all from me today for this episode. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and give me a thumbs up, and see you guys in Sanctuary.
Perfect.